Hello, we are here live with another episode of The Music Prophet. And it's going to be, today is a slight shift, but we're starting to really showcase some folk artists that are coming through town, and I'm excited and also happy that they're in the studio live. So please welcome Tragedy Ann.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi.
So can we go through some names first so people know who they're talking to?
Yes. My name is Liv.
And I'm Braden.
And together we're Tragedy Ann.
So when it comes to touring, this is now probably beyond your sophomore tour.
Mm-hmm.
So how have you found the experience of traveling, playing music now that you've been around the block a few times?
It's shifted a lot, for sure. Yeah. Especially, I have experience now touring with Braden, as well as touring with other groups, mainly my sister. I do a lot of traveling with as the Lifers, and it's totally a different experience being with different people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the folks who are in the car have such a big role in making the tour what it is, and that dynamic shapes a lot of even how the shows go and what the traveling is going to be like, what the eating on the traveling is going to be like. It really does shape everything.
When you figure out, we are way better at collecting all the information that we need from venues now, so that we know when we have to be in a place and whatnot, and we're really good at checking in with each other too to see how we're feeling, because that plays a big role in how you do the rest of the tour. Yeah, I love it. It's great.
Yeah, because that is a major thing, right?
Yeah.
Being able to know that sound check is at a certain time, or that you need to have your equipment in the venue.
Yeah, basically, the more organized we are, the more we're able to enjoy ourselves on the tour. The less questions we have to answer along the way, the more we can just be free, or just have time to chat with people, or go for a forest walk or whatever we need to do.
Well, and being organized relieves so much stress on our end in terms of, driving to the venue and not knowing what we're going to be walking into or what the expectations are going to be like. And the more relaxed we are that way, the better our performance is going to be, the more we're going to be able to be present while we're on stage, and the happier everyone is overall.
Yeah, and food related too, as a little side note, we're getting better at packing the right amount of food, not too much that it goes bad all the time, and also just avoiding those fast food chains that don't make you feel good when you eat it in any way.
That's actually
going to the local places.
I think that's a huge thing to jump into.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to touring, the last thing that a music listener would think about is the element of bringing food, and whether you make it or buy it.
Yeah, we've also shifted to eat a lot more vegetarian-based meals now, as opposed to meat-based, and especially when you're traveling, it reduces a lot of, your environmental footprint. That's something else that we're always aware of, as well as just making you feel refreshed. Usually eating something that's more greasy doesn't make me feel ready to roll.
The occasional bit of vitamin G is appreciated, but for sure, the healthier we eat, the better we feel, and that affects everything. It's like when we record, if you're in the studio for a week and you're eating pizza at every meal, while that sounds really, sounds like a good time to me. It sounds appealing.
You're missing pizza.
But it I think in the long run, you're going to feel sluggish and you're going to burn out, and you're not going to create as good art.
Yeah, because it's energy. It sucks a lot of energy to move around, play the show, maybe have a few drinks, eat food, whatever, and then sleep and drive the next day, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's been a lesson from this tour, is honoring how much energy just the travel takes out of us, because you're not at rest when you're in the car. I was able to see a chiropractor for the first time recently, because we were playing at the Mariposa Festival and they had them available to artists, which was terrific.
Which is huge.
Yeah,
it was
so
amazing.
important. And they, did the rundown and told me everything was pretty well okay, but my hip flexors were actually shortening from all the time in the car. So I need to stretch those out before we hop in the car anytime. And they said ideally every half hour, but that doesn't happen.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, because if we were to stop...
Because you're going to stop every 30 minutes,
yeah,
right?
Have a timer on the phone or something. But yeah, we're doing our best to stay limber and just keep with it.
And also, like, I don't know if anybody listening knows too much about what it's like as a self-managed artist, but there's a lot of work that goes into it pre and post. And also when you're on tour, that means that you have less time to stay on top of the other things that you need to get done, like grants or applying for any kind of showcases or other touring or even just like creative time. So in the car, I always feel tempted to kind of be in the car office where I kind of get other stuff done, but I've had to surrender to the fact that a lot of the prairies do not have steady cell reception, so it's been like a good podcast tour.
Yeah, that's because that is an element that has sometimes come up on the show as well, talking about business. And when the pairs were on here, they were sort of sharing about learning the balance between running a band like a business versus running it like a fun project.
Yeah, totally. I always try and think of it as like the administrative stuff is like that's the business, and then once we get to be on stage or with our hosts or whatnot, that's both the fun part and the thing that is joyful about music.
Yeah, I think you're running a creative enterprise, and if I find it's very easy to spend way too much time at the laptop doing the admin side of things, and I catch myself realizing that I haven't picked up a guitar in a couple days, and I haven't been writing, or I haven't been keeping up in terms of singing and staying in shape that way.
Or just being in touch with yourself in that way. Yeah,
totally. And I think I'm actively renegotiating that division of time and how that is going to end up looking for myself moving forward.
What does that negotiation look like? Because for the listener, or for someone who doesn't have to balance that, they would assume it's just a basic, is it important to do this? No, so let's keep going. But what does that look like for you?
Well, if we wanted to, if we allowed ourselves to, we could work on the administrative end of things 24/7 all year long, and it would never be done.
And on the flip side, we could play the music and write and perform 24/7 all year long, and that would be great.
Totally. and I think particularly with the admin stuff, we're both completionists by nature, and so being faced with this body of work that is impossible to be finished is perplexing and can be stress-inducing. So I think the negotiation looks like setting up architecture to regularly and diligently and deliberately be working on our practice. And
checklists.
Checklists are huge. And keeping ourselves honest with those checklists and having, a dedicated amount of time every day that you're working at this thing, as opposed to trying to do it in binges. I work so much better at just chipping away at things.
Yeah, and I have started to reframe things recently to actually put playtime and self-time on the checklist, because that is something that is important to me just as much as the other things. And I know for Braden, it always helps you to wake up actually early and not sleep in, because then you've got the energy for the day. And yeah. I've been doing a little bit more yoga recently, and it makes me feel ready for the day also. I've been missing that a little bit on tour. I need to get back into it.
And I noticed that with the lyrics too, they're very playful.
Yeah. I have a lot of fun with wordplay in ways that doesn't draw too much attention to itself, ideally, because I like having clever lyrics that aren't hitting you over the head with how clever they are, if that makes any sense. And I like with that tune, it kind of all happens so fast that you maybe don't necessarily know what's going on, with some of the little bits of wordplay in there. My brother is the best for texting me months after a song's been released. He's like, "Oh, I get it," and that brings me joy.
What is your role in that, though?
In this song?
Yeah.
Or just...
Wait, when it comes to songwriting,
Oh.
is that something where you give feedback on the musicality, or do you just let him do it?
It really depends on the song. More and more, it's becoming more of a collaborative process. Usually one of us will start off with the bones of a song if we have something that inspires us, and we just kind of get something out that feels like at least somewhat complete. Then usually it's at that point that we get together and share what we've done and provide some feedback. Learning how to voice that has been really cool too, like learning the ways that Braden responds best to feedback, or that I respond best to feedback, is different, and so we're different editors for each other in a way. And usually there's at least some small lyrical changes that we make. Sometimes it's like, I don't even know if we need this section, or I think that we should totally reframe it and think about it differently, or I try and add some verse into one of Braden's songs, and then usually it's around the same time that we also start meshing together some ways that maybe our voices could work in that song. And usually I have an idea of, oh, this feels like it would be a really good singing saw song, or ukulele, or whatever I want to kind of add to it. And it kind of just starts to percolate and grow from there. So, yeah.
Do you find that, so when it comes to, initially writing, is that something that you're thinking about? That is her input something that you're thinking about as you write?
When I'm writing, I try my best, with mixed results, to write without expectation and without, trying to anticipate what Liv or anyone else might think about the tune. And more and more when I sit down to write, I'm trying not even to think about, I'm going to write a finished, complete song. And often I'll write and I'll get 2 verses down, and then I'll kind of lose momentum or get to a spot where, I want to let it fallow and percolate for a little bit, and I do that. So it's only really once I more and more I'm taking a longer time to write, and I'm really comfortable with that because I think I'm happy with the material I'm putting together. It just takes a little while to have kind of the perspective on it that I want. And at some point along that journey is when I'll bring my tunes to Liv. Her writing style's a little different though, in some ways.
Yeah, I usually end up trying to get a full, what I feel at least at the time is a full framework kind of out for the song. All of my ideas in some way incorporated, even if it doesn't feel finished, it's got the ideas there that I want to have. And usually it takes place in a shorter amount of time in that initial stage. But same with for Braden, pretty much as soon as if I ever start thinking about what Braden will think, or the direction I see the song in, beyond the creative portion of it, it gets me out of that headspace that feels really pure and focused and creative. And so trying not to edit and write at the same time is probably the best way I can put that.
We try to keep our writers and editors from meeting ever. Again, this is an ongoing conversation and something that we're working on, and I don't think we'll ever be done working on, because we're a product of our experiences, and that includes our inhibitions, and the doubts that we have about ourselves, and the number, I've not written far more songs than I have written, because I've started writing something and said, oh, that's stupid. that's dumb,
or like if I have an idea in my head on a random day and I don't write it down or I don't record it.
That's the worst.
That is such a lost opportunity, and I have to, there are phases in my life where I'm really good at kind of letting myself go with it, and other times where my focused brain kind of tries to block that out. So it's a constant journey to do that. Also, I find I much prefer writing on paper as opposed to on my phone or something like that, because it's so much more free, I suppose. Even if my brain is working a little bit faster than my hands, it's seeing the words written in my own hand makes a difference, and not being distracted by the other things that are on that screen too is big.
You're being forced to slow down as well.
Oh yeah.
When you write on paper.
Yeah, it's really, really helpful. Even if it's without an instrument or something, if you're with your paper, that is your instrument at the time.
And I find I've tried writing on a computer a couple times, and the temptation to delete things is so strong. Just not necessarily whole pieces, but even just a line that I'm not crazy about, I'll bring my cursor over it and just remove the whole line. Whereas on paper, everything's down there and everything's preserved in that way. Even if I cross it out, I can probably read it and find it. And sometimes things have been brought back from the grave that way because I had a good idea but didn't recognize it at the time.
And it takes energy to actually cross things out.
Yeah.
And you have to interrupt your entire thought process and creative journey when you're writing to go back and cross something out, see if it makes sense, and then jump back in. So it really doesn't become worth it at that point.
Yeah. It's funny, whenever we're using paper and Braden is bringing the song to the table, sometimes it's really hard for me to read what he's written, not only because of his
questionable handwriting.
Yes, questionable handwriting, but also because he has verses in such like a weird web. It's not necessarily in order on the page. So I usually have to say, okay, can we number these so I know what the order of events is here? And that happened actually with the next song that we're hoping to play. It was all over the place for a long time, and that was really freeing actually for me to think about it in like this. We don't have to make it linear. We can make it linear, but that's...
So are you saying that your writing structure is very linear then?
I wouldn't say very linear, but usually when I write what I think is the first verse, it is the first verse, as opposed to something that makes me feel pulled to put it in the second section of the song or something, like whether it be an actual story that has a beginning, middle, and end, or just thoughts, vignettes that kind of make their way through the song. I think the order that I write things in is the kind of the order that my brain is unfolding thought, which usually makes sense within that timeline.
If we were to compare our writing styles to water, Liv would be a bit more of a pressure washer, where it's just got direction and it knows kind of what it wants, and there's not a whole lot of deviation from that. Whereas my style is a bit more of like a bucket of water being poured into a funnel, where you have this kind of amorphous, unsure thing that is then poured and made more specific and given direction afterwards.
That's so funny.
That is a great...
I never thought about that before. Wow. All right.
And that's a new one. I like that. That's a good analogy.
All right.
When you look up Tragedy Ann, a lot of their sound is blues inspired and very not quite rhythmic, but it almost has multiple rhythms going at once, where the lyrics are one certain pattern, the guitar is another, the accordion fills in that gap. And is that your technical skill, or is that just your natural musical inspirations and passions over the years that are coming together?
I think that's a combination of a number of things, but partially it's trying to get a lush sound at times out of two people, and that's part of the reason why Liv plays umpteen different instruments when we play and things like that. We're trying to provide variety and keep interest in what we're doing and make use of dynamic range as well. We love being quiet just as much, if not more, than we love being loud. And being in between is okay too.
And I also find, for me, like with whatever I add, I like to think about what kind of role it plays in the song in terms of character. Like in this song that we just played, the accordion, I don't know if it came through because it's so quiet on air, but the accordion plays the role of the whispering trees that Braden's talking about, and the soulfulness that moves through them. And so I guess whenever I'm adding something to a song, I don't want it to be there unless it's actually really meaningful for it to be there, whether it be emotional based, rhythmic based, whatever makes people feel what we're trying to convey. I think about it in that way. Yeah, but I haven't really thought about it in a purely rhythmic sense. Like, okay, we got to have some variety of rhythms here. It's like, for me, the emotion and the meaning of the song comes first.
And I think, particularly in the more upbeat or any of our blues-inspired material, we don't have a rhythm section. So generally my guitar ends up doing that while holding down the chord structure of the song, and you do your best with an alternating bass line to imitate an upright bassist or whatever it may be, and you find ways to fill out that sound without it having to hire more people.
Is that a challenge that you enjoy? Because you also, when we spoke before the show, you mentioned that you also have another band that you both play in as more of a fun side project. So is Tragedy Ann do you find that a challenge, or do you find playing in a band a challenge when it comes to playing with rhythms and with having range and filling sound and making songs unique?
I don't know if I've ever been asked that question before. You're good with questions, Kyle.
Yeah.
For me, I think that they're exciting challenges in different ways. And I think of them more as like different sonic and textural opportunities that we can play with. Like, I don't feel limited personally being in a duo. It doesn't feel like the songs that we bring to the table require more than what we perform live. It's fun to be able to imagine things a little bit differently when we go to record songs, or just how to support what we do in a little bit more intentionally recorded ways. But I just love that we have the ability or the opportunity to just scratch both of those itches. Playing in a band that is very textural and extremely dynamic and a lot more complex arrangements, as opposed to stripping it down and playing as a duo. It makes me feel really fulfilled being able to do both of those things.
Yeah, we get to paint with two different palettes there, and one has a lot more colors at your disposal, whereas this one, the Tragedy Ann, is a bit more primary color and basic things, so you have to get creative and individual elements stand out more, which means that you have to pay real attention to them. But playing in the Lifers, I play electric guitar in that band, and there's a cellist, the accordion, another acoustic, and sometimes electric guitar, all in that mid-range that I normally inhabit in Tragedy Ann. So with the Lifers, I'm getting way the heck out of there and playing either very high or very low, and
melodic fusion.
Yeah, finding a niche for that sound so that it doesn't just kind of sound like mashed potatoes.
And I find it a really cool reflection once I'm finished writing a song, thinking about, what do I imagine on this song? Do I picture it more as something that Braden's voice and instrumentation would really suit, or would Anita's voice and the rest of the Lifers flesh out the emotions in a way that suits that band instead? So usually it is obvious to me, but there was a song recently, like Tip, a song that we're releasing as the Lifers shortly, it didn't present itself right away. And actually, for the last tour, Braden and I went out east. We played it as a duo, and it felt great playing it as a duo. And then shortly afterwards, we brought it to the Lifers to think of, like, well, what if we played it in this format? What would it sound like? And it had a whole different feel that I felt like brought more, it like juiced the emotions out a little differently and more impactfully, I feel. So it ended up being a Lifer song in the end, but it works either way kind of thing.
Juiced it in the way as if you had an orange and hit it with a pressure washer.
Yes, pressure washer. That's my motto.
That's not your go-to analogy when you're on stage.
No, I don't think I've ever described any part of myself as pressure washery.
I do like it though. I'm not gonna lie, that'd be great stage banter.
Yeah, maybe we'll say that tonight.
Because it is something that with certain bands you can tell that their stage banter is inspired by quotes they've used elsewhere that I just really like, so I just repeat it on stage.
Yeah.
But does that, the way that you look at songs as a duo versus a band, does that apply to covers? When you go to learn them, is that a filter?
Totally. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you can take that in so many different directions. Covers are interesting that way, and we've become more and more selective in terms of what we play, and we're wanting to play more of our peers' music as opposed to really popular songs, in the hopes that we can help make our peers' music more popular. I think how we arrange covers is essential to look at when going to play it, because I don't want us to really be a tribute act to it. I don't know if we play a single cover the way that the song was made famous by the original artist. And that helps us keep some of our own integrity in that it's our interpretation of that song, and then it also keeps the song interesting for the audience. Yeah. It's interesting looking at covers for this act as opposed to the Lifers, because again, the Lifers just have that many more moving parts and options to bring to the table that make, when we do play covers with the Lifers, it's a blast. We did an ABBA cover at Mariposa that was so much fun.
Gimme. It was like my crowning glory, being able to play ABBA on stage.
Yeah. It was a fun time.
It is a bucket list item though, isn't it? I mean,
oh yeah,
ABBA is one of those bands that you want to play one of those songs on stage at one point in your life.
Oh
It's almost too much fun.
There's a couple bucket list items in terms of cover bands that I would like to do. One of them is ABBA for sure. I would love to do a tour with an ABBA tribute band. And then the other one would definitely be a dream that my sister and I have of doing a Halloween show of all Arthur's songs, like the children's show. Because there are more songs than you would think coming from that show.
That's also very unexpected, because when you ask a musician what songs they want to play, you rarely get that they want it to be songs from Arthur.
Yeah.
Jekyll, hi, Jekyll, hi, Jekyll.
You've got it. And we would all have to dress up as the characters too.
Yeah.
Because it's Halloween. Yeah.
What about you? What are some of your bucket list cover tribute bands?
Oh, goodness. I would love to do. There's an annual Tom Waits tribute night. Actually, I think on Halloween in Toronto, and I'm a huge fan of Tom Waits and would love to participate in that kind of thing. Something for the band or for Paul Simon would be a blast as well. That would be really fun. Yeah, I think even just a night. Our friend Mingja Chen in Toronto does a Cover Your Friends night, where there's a predetermined roster of artists, and there's kind of they pick out of a hat previous to prior to the concert, and they are each covering one of the other artist's songs, but the artist who's being covered doesn't know who's going to do it, and it's just, I think, a brilliant thing. And they've done
that is very brilliant, actually.
They've done a couple editions of that, and I think it just shows so much solidarity and respect and love for the local scene.
Mm-hmm. We just found out recently that one of our fans covered our song.
Yeah.
I think that's the first time anyone's covered our music before. And
which is huge, because that means that you officially made impact on someone enough for them to invest time to learn it.
Yeah,
Totally.
that was really cool because
Totally.
she's like, I think she's a lot newer to music than we are, and it's just really cool that we can be part of those songs that kind of start to shape you as an artist.
Totally.
Because that's huge.
Yeah, and it's been interesting. Even just we only really heard an Instagram video of this individual playing her song, and it was neat listening to it and hear her take again her interpretation of our song, where it's not a duo, it's just one person, and the guitar part changes a little bit. Some of the chord structures are a little different, and
What did you say before? It felt more City and Colour?
Yeah. It took one of our tunes and it sounded a bit more like City and Colour, which I can get behind. I thought it was really neat.
That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty close to an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And before we go, though, tell us where we can find you online, and also just recap some details for tonight's show. So in case if anyone's listening to CKLU 96.7 FM that want to see your show tonight, tell them where they can find you.
You can find us online on Facebook if you search Tragedy Ann. On Instagram, our handle is TragedyGram because of the puns during the band. And we have a website, tragedyandmusic.com, and most importantly, we have a mailing list where we send out little love notes to people across Canada once a month, letting them know what's going on in our garden and in our musical life, and sharing some little pre-release content. And
Some
where we're
sneak
gonna
peeks.
be, where we're going to be playing in the next little bit.
So thank you for listening to The Music Prophet. You just heard our chat with Tragedy Ann.
This has been such a joy.